Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TFTuesday Podcast. My name is Zil, and I'm joined today by my illustrious co-host here, Libra. How you doing, Libra?
I'm doing all right, thankfully.
Nice, nice. We haven't been getting a lot of sun here, honestly, which has been driving me a little bit up the wall. I think we set a record for like number of days without sun, so I'm suffering a little bit.
It's weird because I'm the only one that seems to be really okay with it. I like gray days so much, so I'm like, the sun is not waking me up, getting in my eyes and bothering me.
Clearly, you are just ahead of us on the evolutionary curve because I don't know, I can't deal with it.
I've been called a vampire by a bunch of people.
Well, you can be the vampire, I'll be the werewolf. How about that?
Sucks because I don't really like vampires much.
Fair, fair. So today we have a very special guest joining us. Really excited to have her on, and we're going to be talking a little bit about her journey as a TF artist and creator, as well as incorporating technology into TF, talking about fictional IPs, making art for the female gaze, and a whole bunch of other cool topics. But before we get to that, I do want to also mention that if you like our content, please check us out on Patreon, where you can help keep our show going and even add to it. It's patreon.com/TFTuesdayPod if you want to check it out. And if you have any questions, you don't even need to be on the Patreon. You can always tweet at us with the TFTuesdayPod hashtag or comment on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a like, subscribe, etc. All
Yep,
right.
you can find all that stuff and links too if anything.
Yeah. All right. Let's put that aside now. I'm really excited to have this guest on today. So, Black Sheep, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name's BlacksheepTFs, and I'm really excited to be on the podcast today. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. And in particular, I'm really curious to hear a little bit about kind of your journey as an artist, because I know that you've kind of started producing art fairly recently. And I was kind of interested to know what kickstarted this dive into producing art. Like, was there a specific inciting incident, or what kind of convinced you to finally kind of dip your toe or poof into making TF?
Sure. Well, I was always a longtime fan, more of just like an observer on the sidelines for forever. And then honestly, when COVID hit, I kind of just started an account literally out of boredom. Just
Hmm.
might as well. I'm sitting at home, let me just make some images just 'cause. I was honestly just kind of bored and figured this is a different part of myself that I wanted to explore and see if I could, yeah, dip my toe or hoof into being more of a artist creator instead of just a viewer, enjoyer. So I just kind of started making a few images here and there, and I don't know, it kind of grew and just blew up in a way that I never really expected.
That's awesome. I'm curious then. So you had already like obviously been kind of a lurker to some degree. When you were kind of starting out, were there like specific people you were like looking to as influences, or like when you were trying to start figuring out your style, or did you already have like past non-TF art experience that you were kind of just putting to use?
Sure, it was definitely a little bit of both. I really wanted to express my own style. I was an artist for forever before
Mhm.
starting this, but mainly for actually children's media. Ironically,
Oh, wow.
I had done a lot of children's books and board games, coloring books, like working in the city for big companies doing stationery, that kind of thing. And this was more like an opportunity for me to start doing art for me. And I developed a style that I could do more easily, like is more kind of laid out in a better sequence that I can just kind of produce things quickly and effectively without having to kind of deep dive a little too much. So, yeah, I more developed my own style based on other art that I had seen and liked on DeviantArt for Affinity, Twitter, mainly kind of trying to bridge like semi-realism and kind of a comic book style. I really like, hard lines and yeah, exactly, more graphic.
Yep, I can see that in your work. It's a pretty interesting blend too, because especially in the faces, I can see that you got the very defined details that make, that would border into realism, but everything else seems to kind of veer away from that, and it makes the stuff stand out for sure. And I think that comes mostly in the liminal phases too. I think you have a healthy appreciation for making muzzles come out, from what it looks like to me.
Absolutely. That is such a key factor. And yeah, it is fun to kind of start with something more realistic and then have it be more animated as, say, a sequence goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious then, obviously since you've started putting like that kind of art online in the TF space more recently, what would you say was the most difficult obstacle that you had to face? Like, did you feel like it was a challenge to at first, like, find your footing within the community? Did you have any challenges in terms of setting up shop? Did you have any challenges in terms of dealing with clients or anything like that? Like, what would you say was like the biggest obstacle?
Definitely in the beginning, I was just kind of making art for me, just 'cause it was things that I wanted to see and see if I could draw. And then once people started approaching me for commissions and, actually turning this into kind of a business, which I was not prepared for at all, I think the hardest thing was really making that transition from being like a friend and being social with everyone to like, okay, now I actually have to be serious and run this like a business. Like in the beginning, I was getting taken advantage of a lot, like doing a lot of work, big pieces for commissioners who then would block me and, there goes hours and hours of work for nothing. Like I mean, we've all been there in the very beginning, so just kind of having to harden myself a little bit, like there needs to be that disconnect between being really buddy-buddy, but then also respecting that this is kind of a business now, and I need to treat it like that.
Yeah, it's something that I think a number of people may have trouble distinguishing.
Yeah.
You can be friendly with clients, but friendliness with clients and friendliness with people are two very different things. And
Mhm.
being cordial and everything is just fine. But if you have trouble defining your boundaries, then you can have that kind of thing that you went through, way more chronically. Did that last long for you? Like, how long did you have to put up with people being that way with you?
Probably the first few months, maybe like 1 or 2 months. It wasn't like, every single person then ripped me off. It was like a little bit, like maybe one, like every week or so, or just who I was talking to, kind of things would fall by the wayside. But then I had three in a row, and I was like, all right, time to
Oh
time to
God.
put a cork in this.
Mm-mm, no.
Gosh, I mean, I will say at least like 1 to 2 months before you were like, okay, I'm done with this. That's actually like remarkably quick for some people. Like I know people who like it took them months or even like years to finally
Mhm,
like set those boundaries. So it's really good
mhm.
that, I mean, it sucks that you had to experience that, but it's also good that you were able to be like, okay, now these are my boundaries. And like, that's the end of that.
Yeah, it is good. I would definitely recommend that to new artists, especially if you're someone like me who tends to be a people pleaser, always like, yes, absolutely, let's do it. And then suddenly I've said yes to all these things, and then I'm getting nothing in return. And it's like, ah, man, I wish I wouldn't have said yes to this. So, yeah, it is kind of stealing yourself a little bit, taking pride in what you do and understanding that not every person who approaches you is going to be cool.
An unfortunate fact of life, unfortunately. So.
That is true everywhere. It isn't just, centralized here. No, that is a fact everywhere.
Yeah, and just I guess to add to that, people do seem to be inclined to take advantage of artists because people do not value the work that goes into artwork. And so it's very easy to stumble into these people who will ask you to do all the things that you've been asked to do. And then it's like, bye. It's like, I got a picture drawn. I could get that from anyone. Sure, sure you can. Sure you can.
Yeah, I've kind of had to use the phrase now, is this a suggestion or is this a commission?
Oh yeah.
I love using that.
Yes, happy to hear suggestions all day. Totally fine, but there's no guarantee unless there is a transaction that this will actually happen. But thank you for telling me. Suggestions all day is fine. Just don't expect me to have it, done for you.
Yes. Please respect the people behind the work that needs to get done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then I'm curious because we've talked a little bit about like the online space. Like, did you feel like at the start the current social media system helped you like grow your audience rapidly, or did you feel like it was almost difficult to get noticed at the very beginning? Like, did you have like a huge blow up of interest right at the beginning? Because I know some TF artists, especially ones with art backgrounds initially, like yourself, they start posting stuff and all of a sudden things kind of go haywire.
Yeah, I think mine was kind of a slow trickle in and then kind of the floodgates. And I was looking back over embarrassingly, my old stuff and thinking like, okay, what was the point when I suddenly started getting a lot of people in? And it was when I started doing the Disney princesses, and I
Hmm.
realized it's way easier to search people when you're looking up different IPs. And this might go towards your later question, but people are searching for specific things. They're looking for Wonder Woman, they're searching for Spider-Man, they're searching for Stranger Things. They're using these tags off of already existing shows, games, movies. So then fan art within that's when I really got a lot of people noticing instead of just my own original stuff with just randos.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because I know as well, like for a lot of people, in particular children of the 90s, like, there were all these like TV shows that had transformation as strong themes within them, and oftentimes those intersected with Disney characters and such. And so it's like, oh, well, if I have this like specific memory of Jasmine turning into a Naga, I'm going to look for more stuff like that. And maybe I'm going to look for other things within that media tied to TF. So that does make a lot of sense to me that, once you started doing that, all of a sudden people were like finding your stuff a lot more easily. It's unfortunate though that like there's less of an emphasis sometimes on the original stuff, but hopefully you get to at least make more of that now to some degree.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of a crapshoot sometimes too, I think. Yeah, because like I wouldn't be noticed if I did a lot of if I did like certain IPs because I didn't like to. But then, like for instance, for the longest time, my most faved piece on FA was an old Totally Spies commission that I'm like, I look at begrudgingly now because I'm just like, you know what? I know they said they were aged up in the idea, but I regret that, and so I'm happy that the things that have eventually overtaken it were either commissions that I was okay with showing others or my personal stuff. Although yeah, that's what I feel good. I'm like, okay, finally, something I made has gotten more positive attention in this category. But like I've done like maybe a couple of IP things and yeah, they do get noticed, but I feel lucky that some of my original stuff has surpassed that in a few ways.
Yes, absolutely. I think doing IP in the beginning is a good way to get eyes on you, and then you can continue with more original things, and those same people will still be appreciating that. It's just like easier to search for, these IPs.
It also depends on the style because you got the
Mm,
style for it, so people
mhm.
recognize it very
Yeah,
easily.
that's a really good point. I will say your style lends itself to those kinds of changes really nicely. So
Sure, thank you. Still trying to figure out how to draw anime, but we'll get there one thing at a time.
I see a bit of that, and yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that stuff too.
So then I'm curious, do you have any advice you'd give to artists who are just now trying to get into producing TF content in 2023? Do you think there's like any things that people who are on the fence about producing art should consider that might actually like kind of tip them over into, all right, I'm going to start producing TF art?
I think so far things that have helped me is having, for one, like a brand, like a username that is universal over everything that you use. Like that's been really, really helpful for me, especially because everything is just BlacksheepTFs at Gmail, on this, on that, like at this, it's all the exact same, which has been really handy, especially talking to clients or trying to let people find me in different places. And I know it's cliche, but for beginning artists, like just keep going. Like just keep drawing every day, keep trying new things, and knowing that everything you draw doesn't have to be finished or perfect. Sometimes you can draw just for practice, and that's okay. It's like doing homework. And especially in the TF space, I would give people advice to just start posting things. I'm aging myself a bit, but I remember back in the day, yerf.com was like all pencil sketches, was all pencil uploaded because digital art was like not a thing back then. So it's okay to be doing things just on paper, uploading photos, starting digital. I mean, the more you do, the more you improve. And our community is so starved for content. Even though there's a lot of TF artists and there's a lot of creators now, which is excellent, it's like still not enough. There's
Yeah,
never
Oh, it's
enough.
it's
Never
never enough for
enough.
people. It's true.
Never
just talking
enough.
about this last night.
Yeah, we were. It's true. There's just an insatiable appetite for TF content at all
It's
times.
true. It's true. Like, just get it out there, please. We are begging you.
Don't beg. That's what. That's a whole other conversation too. But I agree with that comments about the sheer want for it. It's wild. If you want to be seen for it, you'll be seen. Eventually, you'll be seen.
Definitely. I think, too, not doing it for what would be the word? Like, not attention, but not doing it for clout. Like, join this community as an artist because you love it, because you want to relate to people and open up conversations, and because you aren't seeing the art you want to see. Like, draw that. Don't just start something to make a quick buck, to gain a ton of followers and fame or whatever. Like, it really is about the passion, and I think people can tell.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And frankly, in my opinion, if like someone was going into it purely for like the clout or whatever, it's easier to just become a furry artist in general and not even do
Yeah,
TF. So like if
absolutely.
you're coming into TF for that, I'm sorry my friends, like it's a lot more challenging than it looks because you will get people who are like your anatomy is incorrect or like this that you will get the
Oh
few
my God.
commenters who are like this is wrong, this is wrong. So
The
if you're in it for
aficionados.
that, yeah, if you're in it for that, this is not the space to go into. So.
Precisely.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Did you feel apprehensive about uploading your transformation stuff at any time?
There were times when people had asked me to draw based off of real people. And sometimes, if they're like, this is me, I believe them and I do that. But then there are times when it's like, oh, here's a, stock image off Google, or even like, here's someone that I know. And I'm always a little on the fence about that. I know that there's a difference between like me drawing them because my style isn't super realistic. Like, I don't think even a drawing of myself, I'd look at that and be like, wait, that's me. I don't think people would be able to recognize, but I still, I don't know. There was one commission I did recently of a girl into a cow, and they wanted to base it off of a real person that they knew. I did it kind of cartoony, unless you recognized her hair and the dress she was wearing. But they asked me to take it down because they were worried that it was going to come across as mean instead of sexy. And I
Mhm.
get that. Like, there's no way to tell someone, no, this is like hot. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, no, you're making fun of me.
Yeah.
So I think that's the one that I've been apprehensive. I usually look at the reference photos and just make sure that I'm not super close on the face. I'm more just like, okay, same clothes and same hairstyle, and that's about it. I try and do more of like a generic face so it's not recognizable.
You represent the people in other ways.
Yeah.
Okay. So in general, it's more been those specific instances and not so much, oh no, I'm nervous to put out the stuff that I enjoy that maybe I'll catch some flack from people or get like a weird comment. That wasn't really that big of an issue for you or what?
Yeah, no, that hasn't been a huge issue for me so much.
Ah,
Yeah, it's been more me worried about like, oh, the wrong person is going to find this, is going to see this and think that like this is cruel or mean towards them. But no, in terms of like my original stuff that I put up, I've been fine with it. I kind of just like do a lot of generic characters, it's no one in particular, or maybe it's a cartoon character. So I haven't really worried too much about that.
That's good. Honestly,
Hmm.
I'm glad to hear that because I know that there's definitely people who, especially like when they were starting out, were like, "Oh, I feel like, ashamed almost of doing that kind of stuff." And that sounds like that's not in the mix, which honestly is great.
Yeah. Breaking through the shame and insecurity of it is the thing that so many people in this fucking sphere have to put up with for so many different reasons. So knowing that you came at it with enough, with enough self-esteem to just be like, yeah, it's okay. That's really good. And even
Hmm.
better that you had the forethought of how to approach people asking them to draw themselves or others in photos and stuff like that. Because boy, that can be awkward. And
Yes.
just a very short story about somebody who was asking me a few times on Twitter to make a commission of their wife turning into something. And I kept stressing, I want explicit consent of this or I am not doing it. And I eventually, and this is kind of both funny and a little fucked up because he sent me a short video of his wife sitting on the couch, annoyingly looking at the camera, saying, "Yes, you have my consent to draw me in art or whatever for blah blah blah." And I'm like,
Oh my
"Okay."
God.
And that guy never followed up,
What?
ever.
Oh, that worked.
Wow. That's incredible. I can't believe they didn't actually like do anything after that.
Yeah, and
Yes,
I'm
that's
like, "Okay,
wild.
so what do you want?" And then nothing.
Nothing. Oh my goodness.
Well, I appreciate you going above and beyond because there's definitely times where I've gone commissions where that's clearly not the case. And honestly, a lot of the time I just kind of turn it down because I'm like, especially like with photo manipulation, I'm like, I'm directly working with the picture. Like, there's no way
Yes,
to
yeah.
just be like, it's not that person because I'm like, this is a picture of that
Literally a
person.
photo
So,
that they might have or have seen. Yeah, I feel that way with
yeah.
photo manip too. Like if I can change it a lot in a drawing, but with the photo manip, I mean, there's no hiding.
Yeah, you cannot hide that stuff unless you like super it's like very far in the TF and you've like super changed everything and even then it's still like, it's got the
Swirl and
bones a bit
mosaic
there.
the face.
Yeah, if you mosaic the face, well then yeah, it's a different story.
But
Oh my
like,
gosh.
man, I also think about how people are willing to share those photos and then they can get like a little too friendly and then, they just, you got that balance between trying
Yes.
to be social and try to be
And
like,
being professional. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yes, I get asked for my picture probably twice a week.
Why?
Oh my gosh.
Stop it!
Oh
Stop
no.
it! Stop it!
People
Fucking
do need to
stop it.
stop. It's like, oh god, boundaries, y'all.
Holy shit. I
Uh,
but
well, this actually makes kind of an interesting segue into the next topic I wanted to talk about because I know that a lot of the guests we've had in the past have been very focused on content that appeals specifically to the male gaze, both from like a queer and from a straight perspective. And I've noticed that you, on the other hand, are very focused on, in my opinion, creating art specifically for the female gaze. So I guess to start, how do you feel about like those terms? Like, or do they resonate with you? And do you feel like my assessment is correct there, or do you think I'm off base?
No, that was really interesting. When I read that, I had no idea. Like, I wasn't really sure because I feel like just based off conversations and people introducing themselves to me, that I have a lot of male audience and commissioners and people that I work with. And so when you sent me that question, I really got to thinking, well, for a long time, I was a female on the outskirts watching and enjoying this art, but I never ever interacted. And so I really thought, oh, is it more that like dudes are more prone to just like reach out and talk and start a dialogue, whereas ladies are more about just watching and enjoying? So I wasn't really sure. Tried to think a lot, and that's just my own experience that
Mhm.
I've had in this is like 9 out of 10 times it will be a male reaching out to me for a commission.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I made that comment or observation primarily because when I talk about male gaze versus female gaze, and this is often used in the context of like film analysis and media analysis, there are certain things that often get emphasized depending on who the content is being made for in mind. And in particular, something I noticed with your work in particular was that your style is obviously a lot more cartoony, but there was still a marked emphasis, in my opinion, on at least realistic proportions, realistic kind of body structure, and that sort of thing. And that oftentimes will get distorted in an interesting way when we talk about stuff from like the male gaze perspective. And that's not really the case on the other side. So that was kind of something that I noticed when I was looking at a lot of your content. And so that was kind
Oh,
of what got me
interesting.
thinking. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I try to do more realistic styled ladies as I can. Like you said, body proportions, sometimes a little exaggerated, but nothing wrong with that. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, definitely trying to keep it within the zone of realism mostly, especially for like starting a TF. I think it's a good kind of base, to work off of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Would you say that your identity as a queer woman has like influenced how you create TF?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of TNA on my account for sure. There's a lot of tits and ass
Nothing
for
wrong
sure.
with that.
Nothing
Nothing
wrong
wrong
with
with that.
that.
We all like
Hell
that
yeah.
here. So,
Hell yeah, brother. So, but it's been also that thing that you get into a lot of like, I'm a feminist, I'm pro-female, but then also I'm making these images and enjoying them as a queer woman. So it's that whole balance. Like, I'm a lesbian, so I am interested in these images, but then I also like, don't want to be exploiting women in that way. But then, like, these are sexy, but then it's like,
yeah,
it's a whole mess inside.
you get into maybe a bit of a recursive loop in your thinking.
Yeah, but I just figure, these are sex positive, they're
Oh
fun,
yeah.
colorful. It's not hurting anybody, so whatever.
Oh,
If we
no.
enjoy these, ladies, guys, everything in between, let's do it.
It's something that I think when you're trying to be considerate of people, especially anybody who's at all marginalized, you don't want to be that person. And, that's good. But it's important to recognize that when people are expressing desires, they can be raw as they want. And that's never going to be the whole story. So if you want to draw some like real cheesecake, because that's what it is, that's what you want to see. You want to see a bunch of stuff on display, that's okay. You know, I think you can mostly tell. I think that if you have a decent grasp on media, you can get the vibe that people are going for. So
Oh
something
yeah.
can be objectifying and you can find it in the image because they want you to find it because they're
Mhm.
expressing it, you know?
Yeah.
Because when I look at your work, it is a lot of fun stuff. It's surprise is just like it's like Moni. It's a bunch of different moods, but none of it ever looks terribly objectifying. I
Yeah.
can see that you're really just trying to make it as visually appealing as possible, where it's just like you see the chest dripping out of the shirt, you see like, big puffy nipples, you see the muzzle, all this stuff, or just the wild proportions. And that's what you have going. I don't see this objectification, no matter if you're gonna like, have laying in repose or like, or like squishing titties together or something. You're okay because it shows because that's your intent. You said it and that's what you're expressing too. And also just to speak to the listeners as well, in terms of being concerned about how you may come off, your intent will show. You're going to show people what you want to experience, what you want to enjoy. After that, it's a conversation between yourself and anybody else who you may talk with.
Ah, thank you, Libra. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that so much.
Trust me, it's difficult because I had a lot of shame to work through when I just wanted to just draw a little bit of porn, and it was like such a big thing for me where it was very scary, and then eventually I'm like, it's okay to do this, it's okay, and why not? I can do this. Egg laying's weird. I'll try it, and I did. And I'm like, oh, that was fun. and also some people seem to like it. So it's a thing to get over because it's just like, oh man, I want to see the money shot of the egg coming out. Oh, but isn't that objectifying? Well, it might look that way to some people, but that's not what I'm doing. It's like, oh, but you got like it's square on like the stretched out pussy. Yes, I do, because that's what I want to see. You're objectifying. That's not the point, but I didn't give you a story either, did I?
Yeah, I mean, I'll also just say, like, I think the intent always comes across in a lot of these pieces. Like, I know it's very ephemeral to say, but like, you can tell, you can absolutely tell when someone is creating an image and the intent is exploitative. And in particular, I would say, in particular to your work, I think there's nothing that is quite as empowering as like getting to produce the content that, you feel seen in and the content that you want to see that you're making, and it's obviously very personal too, and I think that particularly within a lot of queer communities, like, making art to express ourselves is a really important part of that too. So like, I also, like, I agree completely with everything that Libra's laid out here. Like, I don't see any sort of objectification in these, and in fact, again, I think I see it as almost being directed with a different sort of gaze in mind.
Yeah.
The gaze and the gaze, both elements, so
Oh, thank you. Thank you, you two. That is really nice of both of you to say. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can tell, and this is also just for that reassurance. I think we worry about that when we're showing the things that we like. And hey, remember, if you want to be sexy, you're going to be selling yourself in like a way. Not even selling yourself. I don't even want to say that.
Yeah, it's selling specific content that reflects back something within yourself, in my opinion. That's
Yeah,
how I would
like
put it.
if you want to look attractive, you're going to do things that will make you look attractive.
Yeah, exactly. So then I'm curious as well, like, I've noticed in particular that when there's a lot of content that's like woman centric or like queer woman centric, it can sometimes struggle to get focused upon in the current social media ecosystem. Not universally, but sometimes I think that struggle can be a little bit evident. So I was wondering if there's any things that you've done as you've been creating art to try and like combat that sort of, I guess, negative slant that a lot of social media has against content made for and by women.
I don't know. So far, DeviantArt and For Affinity have been fantastic, and that's kind of my haven of like, you can see anything at any time, and I really appreciate, especially For Affinity's system for rating maturity. Like, I
Yeah.
totally take advantage of that. I take that really seriously. Twitter, on the other hand, as you know, it's just the Wild West. So literally everything I put up gets a warning. I mean, I went to the Central Park petting zoo like a few weeks ago and posted a picture of the sheeps, and it was like, this has a content warning. Like, why?
Oh
So
yeah.
Oh,
everything on
geez.
there is flagged. Like, I just put that up for, whatever. It's just another place to be posting art. But really, I focus more on, yeah, For Affinity, DeviantArt, because they seem to be more sex positive, more fetish positive, and Twitter is just like everything is wrong.
That's a pretty good summary of Twitter right now. So I would agree with that. Everything is just wrong.
Everything is just wrong, yeah. So I've been kind of like weaning away from that a little bit,
Mhm.
and just everything. The image quality is not as good on Twitter too, and like
Yeah.
I've been more using that to like find other artists that I like and kind of be connecting with people. It's less about a place where your gallery can be. So I
Mhm.
would say just like finding different sites for different things can be helpful in that regard too. Using different sites for what they're best at.
Yeah. Sites that have galleries for galleries. You do that.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh. Socials for socials, galleries for galleries.
Yeah. Because Twitter does not have a gallery function. And
No.
even though artists have been begging for it for years, but
No, never gonna happen.
yeah, it's not happening. Not now, not ever. So then I guess, one other thing I'll mention, and I think this kind of ties back to your interesting observation at the start. Obviously as artists, we only have a degree of control over the audience that develops around your work. And there's always, I know there's plenty of folks of all genders that follow your stuff. So do you think that kind of rebuts my initial idea? Like, especially the fact that you've said a lot of your commissioners that you've come to have been men. Do you think that introduces kind of like a weird quirk into like my theory, I guess, that I've put forth in terms of how you approach creating your media?
I think the biggest difference that I've noticed has been that the men who have approached me for images are really into TNA and they want the overly sexual images. And then
Mhm.
a lot of the females who've approached me want things that are more personal and a little bit more lighthearted. So I guess it's just different in interest or how they feel about TF, if it's enjoyable or if it's punishment. But then a lot of males also want things of themselves, like they want less, punishing someone else and enjoying it themselves. Like I would say probably it's 50-50 with the guys that commission me is either they want some lady going through a traumatic TF or they want themselves TFing into something fun that they're enjoying.
Interesting. Hmm.
I think that plays into people not really being all that different despite what gaze you're trying to make something for.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you do these commissions, do you take a lot of instruction or detail from your clients on like what it's supposed to look like, what you're supposed to see, how things are supposed to be shown?
Yeah, and I think for some commissioners, it definitely depends. Some people are way more specific, and some are like, whatever you think, I just kind of want my character, you do you, whatever you're into. So there is kind of a different balance in what people are interested in and how much information they're willing to give. I mean, I've gotten pages and pages for one image, of just like every little detail. I really appreciate too when commissioners will send a small sketch. I don't know if they do that for you guys too, but like I love
Occasionally.
that. I love it. It is so helpful. Like, send me stick figures, what you have in mind. Like, that
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference. Oh my
It
gosh.
really does. Stick figures on a post-it note? Heck yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. I love that art tip, and I want that to spread as far and wide as possible for our clients.
Yes.
But I think the to like the original topic, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're choosing to make stuff that, essentially straight guys can appeal to, then yeah, and if that's your idea of what you find attractive, then again, there's not much difference between any group of people for the most part because there is this ingrained idea with a lot of people that oh we're different, like there's just something different about us. Not really. The differences are you can find them, but they're not always that important, and it often comes down to the individual anyway. So if you like drawing pinups and stuff like that because that's what you also find attractive, oh wow, looks like a bunch of guys find it attractive. It's so weird to find a woman who's into that stuff. It's just
Yes.
nobody needs to think that way.
Yeah. We have so much more things in common than we do different, and I wish people
Hmm.
would keep that in mind. Oh man. I was curious to ask something else that I've kind of noticed in your art pieces, in that I've noticed that a lot of them kind of incorporate technology into the transformation. So there was like a whole series you've done where people are TFing because of a phone filter is changing them, or maybe they're taking selfies of themselves changing or post change, or even like changing on stream. There's quite a few that you have them in. So I was interested in what initially drew you towards putting such a large emphasis on technological themes within your art.
Sure. Well, I do wish that I had a really deep answer for this, but honestly, I got one commission one time to try a filter and did it, and it really took off after that. And I started getting a ton of requests, people asking about it, and doing it. So I really just saved the phone template that I had drawn and then was just kind of able to overlay that. And been doing a bunch. I mean, I got a huge influx. Like this whole month, I'm just doing selfies. Like I had to
Yeah.
start an Excel spreadsheet for like all these selfies coming in, like trying to track everything. But Yeah, one of them that was, I guess, different than that of me not just doing a selfie commission was one piece, and I want to do some more like this, but I did one piece of like a streamer TFing
Yes.
into a panda, and
Yes.
I just the whole time I was like, is this weird? Is this gonna work? Like, I really wasn't sure, but I strangely like how that one turned out, and I want to do more of those of adding like it being a screen that we're seeing because at least for me, when I'm viewing TF artwork, I'm on a screen. I'm looking at my iPad, my laptop, and it is formatted that way. So just kind of being interested in adding UI to the outside of these pieces to really make it look like I could be looking at this in the moment on my screen.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really great point actually, and I hadn't really thought about that to be honest. But you're right. I mean, we do spend so much time viewing TF content on our devices, and so it's interesting that you've kind of presented that as like, this is something that you're looking at, but also you could be looking at in real life on the same device, and it almost adds a layer of immersion to that content in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's very slice of life. Like this could have just been a screenshot someone took, like, look what's happening on Twitch right now.
I just think that kind of awareness can really lend itself to people being able to get into it. And I like the way you pull it off. And yeah, I can see why people would keep coming back to them. Just to build on everything you guys said regarding the immersion of it, it's something that I've thought about like for a while too, because having spent a lot of hours on webcam and long distance relationships and things like that, it was a really cool thing to just kind of entertain. And
Hmm.
because of that, it's just fun that maybe you could stumble on somebody who has something that you didn't know was possible. It's nice.
So then I guess I'd ask, I guess this has kind of been touched on, but when we talk about that immersion, do you think that your inclusion of technology in these pieces also reflects like our current kind of societal fixation on tech? Because as we've kind of said, like, it feels really realistic that someone changing today would likely be documenting those changes via, a Twitch stream, or maybe I'm taking a selfie as I'm changing or post changing or something like that. Like it feels almost reflective on where we are kind of right now as like a society. And maybe I know you said it maybe wasn't that deep, but I figure I'll ask anyways because I feel like I see some reflection there.
Yes, definitely. The more I see of how much of at least the content that I'm getting is, front-facing phone or people taking recordings in the moment, I don't think it'd be too far-fetched that if someone is going through a TF, the first thing they're going to do is pull out their phone, open up TikTok, and be like, guys, what is this?
I,
Right? Like,
I would love to see the dance that would be inspired by a TF on TikTok. Like I'm just imagining it right now and it's absolutely wild.
I would more think the sound,
That too.
the
Yeah,
sound
that's
would
true.
be remixed over and over.
I just thought of somebody trying to do a dance and then they fall over with a cramp, and that just goes way out of control.
Oh,
Oh yeah, that would work
absolutely.
too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The sound itself could become a trigger for future TFs.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah, everyone who stitches the video happens to them too. Then it's just
Yeah.
this viral plague. Huh. Right. I'm taking notes, writing these down.
We're
TM,
just gifting out free
TM,
ideas for
TM,
TFs
TM,
now.
TM, TM. Registering that trademark.
That's how deceased happened in fucking DC.
Yeah.
Zombie virus literally spread through media.
Oh, did it really? I didn't actually
Yeah,
know that.
it
Oh, that's so cool.
people would see it and it would just make them go nuts, and they would just become killing machines. And it's like, don't look at your phone, don't look at the TV, throw all that
Yeah.
stuff away. And everybody would see it because they're like, what's going on? And then that would be it.
That's kind of like Bird Box too, actually. Not that that was a TF thing, but like it was like if you saw the thing, then you'd like that
Yeah,
would be it for you, basically.
the ring,
So
but faster.
the ring but faster. I mean that's kind of what it was. So
Mhm.
I guess then I'm curious, are there any like particular ideas related to tech and TF that you feel like aren't currently being mined enough within the TF sphere? Like, are there any that you're itching to see others or yourself kind of incorporate into your work?
Hmm. Lately, I have been interested in the POV, and I think that
Mhm.
using tech, like especially holding a selfie type thing, is helpful in that. And I've tried to do a few POVs, and one of them was like in a mirror. Oh my God, I could not do it. Like the reflection,
Mhm.
like it was supposed to be in a bathroom, and I was like, but then what angle is both sinks? I have to draw two sinks. Like, oh man, I could not figure it out. So
Yeah.
I think the phone especially really helps with having a screen in a centralized place. Like all the selfies, I just kind of add a hand, so you can
Mhm.
see your own hand while you're holding up a phone and using the front camera. But I think I would really love to see video or like even incorporating it into animation, maybe like someone holding up their phone or filters type thing. I've seen a few
Mhm.
artists who've developed some incredible, like actual filters for your
Yeah.
actual real life phone that kind of give you the, donkey ears or the nose and stuff. And I can't wait to see where that technology goes.
Oh yeah, the AR capabilities on some of those filters has become quite incredible. I know, like for example, Liasser is
Yes,
one of those people who's
I
done
was
so
just
much with
trying to
it.
find them on Twitter. I was like, who is that? That is it. Yes, incredible stuff.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal stuff. And, I know that he's done like a lot and like continues to do more. And I'm always thankful for each filter he's put out because there's been some absolute bangers, I will say. And I agree. I'm curious to see where things go beyond that. I mean, I feel like that starts getting into stuff like VR as well in terms of like seeing yourself TF and stuff. And there's so many possibilities. And I can only imagine that as the technologies progress we'll get more and more like firsthand kind of like quasi experiences, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with VR right now, I think things are still fresh, so it's a little like in the funny zone, everything's kind of like goofy and silly, like ridiculous. So I'm looking forward to these spaces in like 3, 5 years when things have kind of smoothed out and you can get more realistic effects.
Not That's not really that far off. It's happening right
Yeah.
now. I got have well secondhand experience, and I think Zil knows too because Katena is in on some really interesting stuff, and she has like avatars that have really impressive transition features and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Even with the some of them are made to have others equip them and then control their proportions, and things like that. And it's happening, and it's actually pretty good right now. It's better than you think it is. And if you want to know more about that, yeah.
Yeah, there's some cool like face elongation stuff that I've seen where it's like the face will literally
Mm-hmm.
change into a different animal. So
Yes, yeah.
it's very cool. Very cool. We need more, but they're doing a very good job over there, which I appreciate.
Yes, huge love to all them. I am the least techie person ever, so like, thank you guys for doing that. I'm gonna stick with my little iPad drawings.
Don't
That's
demean
fair.
yourself.
Eh, there's a niche.
There is a niche. So I guess the other thing I've kind of noticed a lot in terms of the theming that you've done, and we kind of touched on this earlier. Obviously, your work has included a lot of fictional intellectual properties. So in particular, as of late, there's been a lot of Disney characters, as you've mentioned, also like Mario characters and like Pokemon and such. So I guess we talked a little bit as to how that brought in an audience, but I was curious as to what you find is the draw for yourself towards transformation that involves these kinds of properties.
Yeah, I think because they have a built-in personality and you already feel familiar with these characters and with their environments. You've seen them interact with others, with their space, move on their own. So I think that it adds that you can really add that new element underneath who they are, and that their personality isn't just defined by the image. Like if I draw just a random runner who's TFing into a cheetah, it's like, all right, that's just runner person who's cheetah now. Whoever, that's just their whole personality. But you take a well-known character and TF them, it adds so much more to their story, to their past that you know to maybe things that are coming, like you already know an arc of their story. So it isn't just based around the TF that you're seeing.
Mhm. So if I can maybe reflect a little bit back on that, it's almost like because any person who's just like TFing, unless there's like some sort of established backstory, the
Mm.
TF doesn't hit as hard. But when you have an established character and you're doing that to them, the audience already has an implicit understanding as to who this character is, and so the changes that they go through therefore have more of a connection to the audience.
Yes, absolutely. I've always been more drawn to TFs that connect with these characters' universes. You
Mm.
know, someone from Final Fantasy TFing into a chocobo, like, yeah, that makes sense. It's all like together within the same. A gym leader TFing into a Pokemon, like, yeah, that could make sense within their universe. I always get taken out when it's like two kind of conflicting IPs coming together. I'm like, okay, I don't know. Like, it doesn't work for me as much. But when you can really picture, maybe where this TF would be happening in their story, how their other characters in the story would react, how that would affect their journey or quest that they're on, like that's what really interests me, kind of the before, the after, and what this TF causes in their story.
All right, so it's a matter of entertaining the possibilities with the other worlds that you enjoy, right? It sounds like that to me.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's fun. And like you mentioned, if it makes sense within the universe, one thing that I like to entertain was enemy skill. Don't know why somebody else hasn't already thought of it because I remember using Matra magic and with Tifa in Final Fantasy VII. I'm like, where are those missiles coming from? What if she just, developed the means to fire missiles out of her back? That would be wild, you know?
Mm.
And it's like, why wouldn't every enemy skill change like a part of the body to make it happen?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
I have a really old drawing of, I have like a couple of really old drawings of Tifa using the enemy skills and gaining traits to use them, but I haven't felt the confidence to return to it.
I was curious then, obviously there's been a lot of, I've noticed at least, there's often a lot of subversion with these transformations in the sense that these are coming from properties that obviously do not have quote unquote adult connotations to them, but, then lots of transformation media gets made of them where, you've got the TNA out. So I'm curious, do you think that this is kind of a subversion on like often what is a comfort connection to like a lot of these intellectual properties, or do you think something else is going on here? Like, is it just people thinking with horny brain?
I think it's a mix, and I think even myself kind of flip-flop back and forth every once in a while. So I would think that it is part of maybe nostalgia or just connecting with like TF content that interested you as a kid, characters that interested you when you were coming into your own. Like, I do get a lot of commissions that are very specific, this one scene from this one show from 1993, and then just enhance it. Like, I just did one recently that was the Scooby-Doo Zombie Island Werecats. And that was one of my favorites growing up, too. Like, absolutely. So, kind of expanding on those things and really, I feel like fleshing out the universe around these IPs that we're familiar with.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that, as you've kind of like mentioned, even with just that example, like we all like with those kinds of properties, there is that kind of nostalgic connotation to it that draws people in. And, when we think about content that influenced us, when we were younger and now we're adults, it's like, how do you put a new spin on that and make it even more appealing in some ways to the person who's commissioning it, or obviously for the artist who's creating it?
Right, yeah, exactly. I think a healthy dose of nostalgia and with taking things to the next level, I think that, yeah, that's all wrapped into why those have been so popular.
Are there any like I guess fictional universes that you've been kind of itching to make TF content of, but you haven't yet? Like, are there any beyond the ones that I mentioned, I guess?
Yeah, there's some, it's mainly like video game franchises, But something I really run into with those is the costumes are so intricate. And I'm just like looking at these characters, even in some anime too, like, oh, that would be great to draw. But like, how the hell does this costume work? Okay, where does that shoulder go? Like, what? Like, I'm just wrapping my brain trying to like all the little intricate little details. Like, it's a true testament to the original artists who draw these and the 3D animators who do it. Because I just like, I look at some of these designs and I'm like, oh my God, I do not want to have to like draw all of that. Oh my gosh. So, a lot of video game characters, a lot of like warrior characters. I would love to draw, but oh my gosh, the costumes are so daunting.
Sometimes the best thing to do is to not really replicate it, but to make it in a way that makes sense to you, because it'll be recognizable if you're following the general idea of it. But if it doesn't work in your brain, then yeah, you can just either not focus so much on something or just kind of change it a little bit or even add things. There are plenty of people who will look at a design and add things to it that weren't there before. And you still know it, and it becomes it's just an alternative view of it. And I think that's some of the best stuff. And I think because also I've seen it in your gallery too. Pokemon, for instance, I've done like a few Pokemon things, and I would never really want to copy it, beat for beat or line for line. So instead, I like interpreting it. And so if I had to interpret things like clothing and outfits, I don't know, maybe I'll want to do something that will have it make more sense to me. And you could do that too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like simplifying it in an effective way, keeping the same color schemes and overall design so that it is recognizable without all the little details and trinkets involved with these costumes. Yeah, that's a
Mhm.
good point. I'm definitely going to try that.
I'm curious then, is there like a video game franchise in particular that jumps to mind that you would want to do that with?
I really love the Horizon series, and when I think about it, I've gotten so many requests and suggestions for like Aloy into these machines, and I'm like, I have never drawn machines ever. And so I've always been really scared to like try that. Not only have I never drawn machines, I've never drawn a machine TF, and like when I try and think about how that works, I mean, my brain just sizzles. So I was always like, I'm gonna cop out and just do like Aloy into like a fox or like something like that. I don't know, but I know it would be a true challenge to do into a machine, and I'm just like, that one's on the back burner until I'm ready. I need to practice. I need to like get to a place.
I gotta tell you, I want to do machine stuff too a lot, and I've dabbled in it. And looking between the artists who can do the super intricate things, where they seem to know what is under the armor and under the plates and things. There are plenty of people who do wonderful mech art that, when you take a close look at it, they have obscured or at least or sometimes even completely neglected certain details that these other people might have actually included. Um, this is going back to the previous point. You
Hmm.
can simplify. You can simplify a lot of things, and you could just or very like subtly imply. There's so much room to make machines look good and make them look like machines that wouldn't need you to become, an engineer in order to figure it out, or a roboticist or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, and you can do that, and even like you can even make machines that are a little more sleek, that they look very lifelike, but you have a few hints. It's just like, this is what makes it a machine.
Yeah, I will just say also specific to Horizon, I love that series. I did actually one time commission a Scorcher TF, like the machine.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Obviously that's an example from an artist who obviously likes to do that kind of mechanical like detail and such, but I completely agree with Lieber's point in that you can definitely simplify and you can still get the point across, so long as it feels like it goes with the style that you've already created. I definitely think it's something that's doable, if you have the desire to do it, and I always like the machine TS in of those. So
Wow, that scorcher is amazing, by the way. That is fantastic.
Even
Yeah.
in that one, there's actually a lot more simplification going on
Oh
than
yeah,
it
of
may
course.
look. You know, you look at it and you're just like, oh wow, it's a complex machine. But that's expressed through showing only what needs to be shown. You can break down a few things. Like if you look at the game model is way more intricate than this. And if you compare the two, suddenly you'll be like, hey, wait a minute, that's not too daunting. But our minds are pretty good at filling in the blanks, so this looks way more complicated.
That is a really good point. Just getting over my fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's
I'm
always
with
a
you.
challenge. It's always a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, I've been trying to get better at like letting myself practice. Not every piece, not everything I start needs to be finished. Sometimes I can just figure something out, make mistakes and then move on and do it for real.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Everyone has to start somewhere, as we've said before, and even if you don't share it, if you start taking stabs on it, eventually you'll get to a point where you feel comfortable sharing it, I think. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have one more topic I wanted to chat about. So this one is suggested by one of our patrons, Patrick Coyote, and it's all about kind of partial TFs. And I don't know if either of you have noticed this, but I've kind of noticed a bit of a trend in terms of having changes that get stuck halfway through a TF. There was a lot of this in particular when the whole hoop TF thing was going on, where like, oh, like you're halfway through the hoop or whatever, and then it breaks, and then you're stuck midway or something like that. And so I was curious if you had any thoughts on that trope in particular, and if you've ever felt like you're kind of drawn to them, or if that's never really been much of an interest or focus for either of you.
I love that trope. I'm so all about it. I love it. I guess there's different ways of things being halfway. Like you mentioned, the hoop. So it's like literally a cutoff point of like a half and half. Whereas a lot of times people will talk to me about TF in terms of percentages. They're like 75%, they're like 10%. And so I kind of have always visualized that as being overall 10%, like 10% on ears, 10% on claws, 10% on tail, instead of just, it there being a literal cutoff point. So for me, a partial is almost kind of werewolf-esque, where it's not like you're a wolf, you're kind of a hybrid.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a really interesting take on that too, and I think that definitely falls within that realm of partial TF. And like you said, it doesn't always necessarily have to be like, oh, like this is just half, like top half is human, bottom half is not. It can even extend to things like maybe your external presentation has not changed that much, but your mind's like completely changed or something into like a
Oh,
completely
yeah.
different like aspect,
hmm
animalistic or otherwise. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Libra.
When it comes to the halfway thing, it's I think an extension of a lot of what people want to see. They want to see something that'll kind of go wrong because it'll be fun or or just weird. One of the things I like about transformation is how weird it can be. So extreme changes from one very different thing that isn't too analogous to a human, that could be very interesting to me. And I think if you're gonna have like half of your body stuck in some sort of way, I find some appeal in that. That could be really fun. It's always going to depend on the execution, but I see potential in that. Although I haven't really noticed the trend of specifically the whole hoop breaking thing, but the whole something has gone wrong has always been there, and it's always been super strong. So like when I made my K-suit idea, there have been a bunch of people who would talk to me, and they would be asking me questions like, "But what if it breaks? But what if it breaks this way? But what if that?" And I'm just like, "That's not the point of this." And the fun thing is that I was always end up finding solutions to prevent that.
The
But
problems.
yeah, like you're gonna give me this, but no, no, no. Here's how I prevent that because I want to preserve the idea. That all to say, yeah, I can still see some charm in the whole hoop breaking thing, and I don't know. I've just yet to really see it too much. What I have seen is that people go through the hoop and then it's broken, and then they're fucked.
Yeah. Which, that's its own idea of fun. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously also like different art comes across everyone's timelines because that's how it works these days. So one person's trend might never reach another person's mind. So
Which sucks, man, because sometimes I do want to. I don't care if it's not always for me, but I like seeing things. I do. I
yeah,
like seeing all kinds of art. I feel really bad too when you got artists who are known for transformation. They'll be like, "Oh, I've been working on a lot of personal art." I'll be like, "Oh, I'd love to see." I was like, "Yeah, it's not transformation though." That no, I just want to see artwork. I love
yeah.
art.
Yes, that's the whole point. Exactly. I guess just too, like starting off in this really opened up so much different types of TF art because before I was just viewing for myself and I had no idea how broad this faction is. Like it truly is a tree with all these crazy branches. Everything is different. I had no idea about half of these amazing tropes that I see, from
Mhm.
inflation, like pool animals, to the hoop, like you mentioned, to halfway, to cartoon. And like it really just has, not to be corny, but like expanded my mind so much. Like some of these images and some of these concepts, I'm like, my brain can't even like parse what I'm seeing of
Oh
these
Yeah.
like amazing things like a human transforming into a cartoon and just that halfway point is like so interesting and how these artists create that. It's been fascinating to see and just I've learned so much.
Oh yeah, 100%. I honestly think like even like tying back to like even just like the idea of a TF stopping halfway, like, you know, growing up that wasn't really necessarily something that I would see in the media unless, oh, there's something that went wrong maybe. But like oftentimes the draw was like, I want to get to the completed stage. But, then seeing people engage with that kind of topic, it's like, oh no, this is something I'm actually interested in. And like you said, it expands your mind in terms of what things are out there to potentially enjoy within this one topic of transformation.
Yeah,
hmm
absolutely.
And it layers your appreciation. So suddenly something you like maybe gets a little better because you take stuff you like and add it. Because that's what's been happening to me over the years. I tell you that.
Oh yeah,
Yes, yes.
absolutely.
And I do really appreciate that those type of kinks only really at the moment can exist in artwork, you know? Like you're not really going to see these type of things in film. You're not going to see them in
Yet
mainstream media. Like it just
for a
has to be
while.
through artists. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
fingers crossed, but like being realistic,
It's gonna
probably
happen. The reason I say it's gonna happen eventually is because everybody grows up and and a number of us will become these people who will get others on board to make certain kinds of media. And people have been trying while we've been posting art, people have been trying to do this. Um, and whether it worked out or not, you can find the evidence of them like over the internet. And I even like to take cat people as an example. Feel how you will about the movie, but you got to remember that the tagline of the movie poster says that it is an erotic fantasy. It is an erotic fantasy about a woman who can transform into a panther, you know? And that is
Mhm.
and that is like the whole crux of it. It's just like, oh yes, they're lovers, but it's forbidden because if you do, she'll turn into a beast and kill you. That's something. And there's
Oh
an
yeah, that's
entire
definitely
movie
someone's
made out of
thing.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
an entire movie made out of it. And then there's Spring. Spring is a very good movie that can encapsulate a ton of that shit
Mhm.
because it has to do with how you cope with being with somebody with that kind of existence, with those abilities, with those traits. It's out there, and it's going to be noticed eventually by people, and maybe people that don't get it might get into it, and then when those people get into it, there'll be a little swell, but
Mhm.
you know, there could be this genuine growth of it not too far into the future.
I also point like to the plethora of recent animated movies that clearly have transformation as a trope within them. Like that is coming from people who grew up with some of this content and are now in a position to make content of their own and are choosing to incorporate that in some way. I think animated movies have been some of the strongest examples of this as of late. And if you think about it in a nice, like, kind of recursive cycle, it's like those movies will also be the fodder for other people who will then grow up and will have enjoyed that kind of content and will make their own. So
Yep.
I do think over time it will hopefully increase. I would obviously like to see more. But I think like we're already seeing those signs of, I think, it being expressed in also like a different way. Like in the past, it was expressed in like a horrific way or like something that wasn't desired, and that is definitely
Yeah,
less
a
of a
punishment.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's definitely seen as a lot more than just a punishment these days in media, which obviously I like. So
So here would be, I guess the last thing I'd want to add to this is, just because it's not in the way you'd like to see it or that you hope to see it, doesn't mean it's not there. There is actually way more. And if you keep an eye out for it, and if you're kind of hoping for more, there's gonna be more. There is.
Hmm.
So then I guess when it comes to partial TF, going back, I guess, to the original topic, I obviously there's also like certain creatures in my mind that kind of inhabit that space, like inherently. So like demi-humans like satyrs and such. And I'm curious if you've done any kind of like TFs into these kind of very human-like, but with animal kind of feature kind of creatures, and how you kind of like handled that.
Yes. Well, personally, I love those because I've always been more of a fan of magic and fantasy themed TF rather than like science experiment type, theme
Mhm.
that we see. I'm definitely more for like magic spell gone wrong.
Yeah.
So I do like those in the fact that they can exist in those types of stories as well. And I wonder too about how they factor into certain stories, how they work in with I guess different IPs and things that I've seen. And it
Mhm.
probably really depends on the world that they're in. Like some that I've seen, like you said, with satyrs, a lot of the time they kind of come across as like evil. So I feel like a lot of the half animal characters that I see in media particularly are like villains. I don't know, I
Mhm.
feel like I've seen that a lot.
Yeah. And so then I guess when it comes to like producing art of those kinds of things, like have you done a lot of that in the past, or is that been more just like something you've seen in media in general?
I don't think I've really made a lot of art like that. I feel like for the half characters, interestingly enough, even though they are half, they like are finished, like a mermaid is not like halfway to being a fish, like caught in between. It just like is. Same with a satyr. So those type of characters have been done. And I also feel like characters like that have existed in that body forever. Like they're a species, so they interact with other mermaids. They live in a mermaid lagoon with other mermaids and stuff. So it isn't so much of a thing for them. It's just kind of what they've always known, and that kind of takes the confusion or the unfamiliarity with your body out of it a little bit, which we see a lot in TF. Learning your new body.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if it is kind of like the end state to some degree, there's a little less in terms of the ways of confusion. I will say though, like in terms of how I view it, I mean, there's a strong argument to be made that that is a form of partial TF to some degree, and I do think that, like you said, like a lot of times, like some of those creatures can be portrayed as not having the best intentions in media, but I like to think that within a lot of the art that I've seen of those kinds of transformations, it can be spun in a lot more of a positive way, and it can be honestly be really rewarding to create. Like I will say, like I've made a few satyrs in my day from like a photo edit perspective, and honestly, I really enjoy them. They're a lot of fun to make, and that kind of blending of human and animal, even though it's like the final state, like it does give like strong like mid TF vibes, and I think that's kind of cool.
Yes, definitely.
I think it's cool because those kind of bodies give you the obvious traits that you don't have. So if you have, these powerful goat hindquarters, like how fast can I go? How well can I climb? How high can I jump? And that's part of the fun of that. There can be this exploration of the unfamiliarity of your body if you become entirely a goat or a bull or a bird of some kind or, a shark. But if you have, you plus that thing, then you could be like, oh, I can do everything I can do and I can do this. And that's a different kind of appeal to be found there. Um, yeah, and I don't know. I can see how it has like the mid transformation vibes, but it's always going to come down to if people are just looking to just be a thing entirely different. Because when I look at a satyr, the satyr's done. And I'm like, that's cool. You're a satyr now. Satyrs are really cool. And if somebody's like, oh, that has good mid TF vibes, then I'm kind of like, is that not enough for you?
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. It's a reach, Your Honor, but it's a reach I made. So
Dismissed.
I think too, with it being like their own thing, like if you're a human, then you're amongst all these other humans. You TF completely 100% into a goat, then you're just kind of lost in the goat herd and no one knows you were human or anything. But then if you're in between, if you're a satyr, then you're your own species and you kind of exist in this gray area. Kind of the best of both worlds. You have thumbs. You can open and close the
Sometimes,
gate,
sometimes you got
maybe.
thumbs.
Or, you have the mental capacity to be able to not get trapped within a fence.
that's true. That's
But
true.
then you have
Oh
cool
man.
horns and hooves and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot to love about them. So,
Yeah, it's fun.
um,
And then there was another thing I think from the questions. It was navigating your life stuck as an animal, but I think you answered part of that where, it would be a lot of trouble because then assuming that you don't get to keep your faculties, you're kind of stuck at the whims of higher beings.
yeah, or also like like if you got stuck halfway through a TF and you know maybe you can't even express or articulate yourself anymore, even if you're all there inside, and then it's like it's gonna be you're gonna be at the whims of like you said whoever comes along and finds you, and like there's a lot of interesting stuff I think that can be mined from that as well. More I think in writing though than I think in like artistic stuff because a lot of that delves into like the interaction and like like
Oh, you
what
can
kind
do
of like
it.
situation are you put
You
in?
can do it. It takes a lot of work, but it can be done. You could do things without any words. It's just like now I am a goat, and you can have a panel of like trying to get into a place or trying to get noticed, but then people noticing like, hey, and like chasing you away. It can be done. Don't underestimate it.
That's true. It's definitely something that requires more than just a single image, though. I would say, like, you would have to have more than that.
Yeah, people are used to single images. It was like, oh, single images aren't good at telling an entire story all the time. Of course they're not. What do you want? You want a visual novel.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah. Okay,
oh, you want a
well,
visual novel, but you're upset that is not being made for you. Okay.
cool. So I guess we'll just get into the questions. So we had two questions come through from our patrons this time. And so the first question I have comes from Stormy Fennec. And so Stormy asks, you've been TF'd into an action figure. It can be an anthro, a human, mid TF, it's up to you. What would be the two accessories that you would come with and why? So I'll give you both a second to think because I have my answer prepared. Mine is actually very easy because obviously I would be some kind of a lombax. So I gotta have my wrench and I gotta have my like combustor gun. Those would definitely be the two I would come with. Easy for me. Like I'm just diving into Ratchet and Clank and that's the end of that. But yeah, that's me.
Interesting. Very interesting. I think I would come with detachable sunglasses because I'm always wearing sunglasses. I have
Nice.
really sensitive eyes, really sensitive skin, just comes with being a ginger, but
Mhm.
I always have a hard time in the sun. And my sunglasses push my hair back in such a like nice way.
Oh, nice.
Always, like even if I'm going out when it's already dark out, sunglasses.
Nice. Nice.
So I would definitely have a good old pair of sunglasses and probably either my iPad for like sketching and drawing or probably some chewing gum. Hmm.
Nice. Excellent choices.
Yeah.
How about you, Libra?
Okay, I think I would want I think I'd want a cloak, like nice long hood with a, nice long cape. I would want that, the kind that you could kind of like, pull in front of you, just obscure your whole body if you want to, or like leave it
Mhm.
open. I absolutely love that shit. You know I
Yeah,
do.
I do.
And and I couldn't really think of like anything else. And actually, no, wait, that's right. I got confused because I thought a sword would be cool. Like, no, you know what would be cool? Because if I was going to do with my Sona, I'd want like I'd want a different pair of hands that would be like big claw hands.
Ooh, that's
Dang,
nice. I
those are
didn't think of
cool
that.
answers. Wait, I had
Yeah.
boring answers. I had like real life answers.
Well, you
No,
thought
I
of
thought they were still good.
I okay, so Zil said like, oh, I would be my Lombax self, and I'd be like, okay, I
Yes.
guess I could just pick the character I made for myself, and that's
Ah,
where I went
dang.
with it.
Those are awesome. Okay, I changed my answer. I want giant horns
Ah,
and a
Okay.
okay.
huge like bow and arrow that shoots ice magic. That's
All
Oh,
right.
better.
perfect.
Yeah,
I
fuck
love
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's way better. Sunglasses and gum. God, you guys are just showing me up.
I thought that and I was just thinking like, if I pick the sword and the cloak and the hood, I'm like, I'm just copying guts.
No,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
But I was just like, no, claw hands could be cool. I'd like to be able to just like grow out the claws whenever I want. So it's just like detachable hands. You could get into like cool poses. I've watched a lot of toy review videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, that's awesome.
and make sure the cloak has wire on either edge so you can pose it.
Oh, yes, very important.
Oh,
Yeah.
You
okay.
do want it to be posable, so
Yeah,
that's a good point.
posability is very important.
Yeah.
Oh, I want mine to have one of those like, remember those old Power Rangers that like had the head that would like flip? That's
Oh
what I want
yeah.
to have.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
One
yeah.
of
Oh,
those.
Oh wait, yeah, you could do that. That would be
Yeah,
great.
right. That would be
With
great.
like
Like
a
instant TF,
half
like
sheep or like full sheep,
yeah,
whatever you would want to go
yeah.
into.
I
probably
love
wouldn't
that.
fit like in the chest of the doll, but whatever. That's for the toy engineers to figure out.
Exactly. You're just the ideas person, you know?
Right.
Ah, are there either you ever heard of Jobby the Hong?
No, I'm Googling it right now.
No.
Oh, he makes toy review videos and but his are so entertaining. I don't care if it's a toy I care about. They're just really good to watch. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, the toy is actually pretty cool. And he loves Transformers toys. So he does transformations on his
Ah,
videos all the time.
Of
And
there you go.
course.
and I'm just like, and it's really cool to like, how the fuck does that work? And he shows the whole thing of how it's supposed to work, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting how I went from that to that. But I think he's great, and as I'm like thinking about like, I hope that, we would look at the figure to be like, the painting and the sculpting on this figure is amazing, something like that.
Yeah.
That's what we aspire to. I agree.
Hmm. This is the best toy ever in existence. Like, thank
Yes.
you.
For the price tag of $150 because it's a premium toy made for like 15 and older, but also not. No 15-year-old can afford this or
Yeah,
justify
no
it.
kidding.
Then it's just a display action figure.
Fuck
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, awesome. The other question I have is from Patrick Coyote again. And the question is, how has being a TF enthusiast changed your relationship with or thoughts about animals IRL?
Definitely a good question. I feel like there really is a disconnect too. Um, I think, especially just trying to think back of when I was at the zoo a few
Mhm.
weeks ago, um, that, like, for me at least, TF isn't all consuming of my personality. So I can go into spaces like that and still appreciate real animals for what they are and, view them scientifically or with enjoyment of their existence and not think about TF in that way. I think it's
Mhm.
only when I'm in that horny mindset that I start thinking of those things. But, I've never looked at my cat and been like, what if you just TF'd into a human right now? Like, I
Uh,
don't know.
That's fair. I guess you would say you don't have the TF brain rot because that's definitely something I have where I'm like I'm out and
Yeah.
about and I'm like, oh, that could be TF or like oh, this thing has TF vibes or whatever. So,
I get that. I do get that when I'm watching like a movie or a show.
Mhm.
I'm like, are they going to TF? Are they going towards that? Wait, are they saying that? Oh, no, it's just like a zombie or they're just a vampire now. Lame, like
Yeah,
kind
I
of
know. It's
thing.
like, come on.
Like, come on. But like in real life, no, I have been able to separate myself from that. I haven't gotten the full rot yet, but I will. I'll let you know when it happens.
Fair. I mean, I will say that one thing I'll say about TF is that I definitely got more of an appreciation for like anatomical stuff, and like that was definitely one of the things that drove me to like dive into it even deeper in terms of the content that I was making. So I will say that TF has helped me from that perspective. But yeah, I just also have the TF brain rot, and that's that on that. So
Okay, so when it comes to a relationship with animals, there's some animals that I'm not really exposed to all that regularly, and it's a little bit hard to just think of like, oh, person from this to that. Now, if I get to see something in person, it could be really striking to think, you know, human to horse, very popular. Um, never been near a horse? Holy shit, those things are actual monsters and they're really weird. And you're just like, wow, your human body, no matter how big a human you are, would have to go from that into that. It's fucking nuts. Absolutely insane. And it would be incredible to fucking watch. Horny brain or not, it's just like, wow, how even? How would that really look? What would it really be like to actually see that? And that's one of the ways I end up thinking about it. Um, Also, I think how if somebody likes certain animals, there's sexualization. Sometimes I'll look at the animal and be like, man, people just look at you and get horny, and that's weird to me, or like get into like the horny mindset. And although I can understand that, I also am kind of like, there's more to you than just feeding my desires and things. I think it also helped me appreciate just what they are in general and at least learning more about them. So if I went and I saw, for instance, like I think it was it the bison at the Toronto no, the High Park Zoo. I don't know if they got buffalo or bison,
I think it's bison.
but they're so big and impressive. And I'm just like, man, the potential in seeing somebody turn into that could be a lot of fun for me, but also like, look at you. You're fucking beast. And there's also a ton of history behind you. Like you almost were extinct in North America and all these other things. It's I think I guess it's helped me deepen my appreciation for animals, and kind of it even helped me appreciate what I am because I keep bringing this up, but some people are just like, oh, I am lamentfully human, but it's like, wow, animals have also these disadvantages that I've learned about that we don't have, or that we somehow miraculously circumvent. It's done a lot for me whenever I look out, at nature and the world.
I think too, it's really opened my eyes to anatomy as well. Like at the petting zoo, they had a donkey, and I was like, wow, I'm way off. Like every donkey that I've drawn is nothing like this real one. Oh my God, like it's so much smaller, and like just the face and the colors, like seeing them in person, I'm like, okay, I don't know where I got this stylized idea of what a
Other
donkey
artists.
looks like via other
Other
artists,
artists.
exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely. Seeing one in real life, I was like, wow, I am way off.
Okay, donkeys are ruined for me in transformation because the same things come up. They're dumb, they're slow, and they're just like a slave to instincts. The donkeys are intelligent and loving, and they're actually way cuter than people
So
draw them
cute.
out to be. They're really
They
fucking
are.
adorable.
They
They're like really
are.
sweet. And one of them is like, oh, they do the honk. Like, yeah, I know they make the big noise, but they're doing it because they want to talk to you. They're trying to get noticed, and it's really sweet. And that isn't captured in art most of the time because people have typecasted donkeys into being these like inferior creatures, which is, something that's happened to a bunch of animals. Certain animals get lifted to these mythic fucking standards. Horses and tigers. Horses are couches with anxiety. Any little thing that goes wrong will lead into a cascade of medical problems that could easily get them killed, and they have no way of being saved. Tigers are beautiful and very powerful, and they're fucking huge. And also, their success rate in hunting is like 10%. They suck at it. They suck. And it's like, and then it's like, donkeys, look at donkeys. Like, no, donkeys are really important. Go talk to people who know about donkeys, and you'll probably be disappointed that they don't fit your narrative. Or pigeons. Pigeons are, something that are have been made into being pests, but they're here because of humans. They're actually very intelligent. They're actually domesticated, so we kind of forced domestic animals into the wild, not unlike cats, but people don't have the same sympathy for pigeons that they do for cats and dogs. And, just tying this back to how does transformation, like, you look at them like that, and it's good. You want to deepen your relationship with the animals around you, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, sometimes maybe separating is good. Like there is this like TFable version of these big dumb donkeys, and then you can take yourself out of it in real life by seeing how this actually is and kind of leaving those thoughts, those negative thoughts, just like in, porn drawings of them instead of, feeling that way in
Yeah.
real life.
And you can enjoy both. You can
Yeah,
enjoy both,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. It's but hey, at least good that you have used your observational skills to look at the donkeys and be like, huh, that wasn't right.
Well, that was all of the questions that I think we had. I don't know if you had any questions for us.
I don't know. I'm just looking forward to all the next episodes in this season. I'm really excited for other artists you're going to have on here and other creators. Just looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited for who we have in the mix potentially to be on future episodes. I think this season's going to be a good one, so I'm really glad to hear that. And also thank you so much for being a guest as well and coming onto the podcast. It's been really fun getting to chat with you, and I really appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge with us. It's been great.
Oh, always, anytime. Please have me back whenever you need a filler.
I want to be a
Well,
filler. There's definitely going to be other stuff that we can talk about, and I
yeah.
like your perspectives on it. One of the things I wanted when I first started posting this stuff was, well, art in general. I just wanted to be able to discuss ideas with people, but more so with this because I started with a lot of shame, and I also wanted to know, well, what do other people like? What are these ideas that you may have? And I always enjoy talking with new people. And yeah, you have very interesting perspectives on this. You're somebody that's definitely good to talk to. And yeah, it's also been good to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you, friend. I really appreciate that a lot.
Fantastic. And so if people are looking for you, where can they find you online?
Sure. So I'm on the big three, DeviantArt, for Affinity, and Twitter, just BlackSheepTFs and all those places. And I have a Patreon page, which is, again, just BlackSheepTFs.
No
Amazing.
underscores, no periods, no spaces, right?
No, just pure as the driven snow.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again for coming on, and thank you so much to everyone for listening to this episode of the TF Tuesday podcast. Again, if you like our stuff, please feel free to give our Patreon a check out. It's TF Tuesday Pod. We always appreciate anyone who chips in, but of course, that is fully optional, and we hope that you'll just consider supporting us as we go through with season 3, which again, we're very excited to be delivering, and I think y'all are going to really enjoy it. But in the meantime, I hope that everyone has a great week. I hope you get some good rest. You deserve it. Eat well, keep an open mind, and stay TFy, and we'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.
See you later, everybody.
Thank you.